So technically, the thumbnail is a little bit clickbait because even though it is true that 365 times 5 is 1,825, 2020 and 2024 are both leap years, which would add an additional 2 days. So technically, the 5 year streak is actually 1,827 days, not 1,825. It just looks a little better on the thumbnail. But yeah, I've been using this program every day for 5 years straight. Started back in 2019, late 2019, when I was still messing around with it and dabbling. I started using it for language learning, and it eventually morphed into something greater. I started using it for my college studies and studies that weren't related to college, just things, interesting things that I found in my free time. So, for example, and here's all the years, I started using it for, and I've discussed it in the past, astronomy. There's this open source textbook by Rice University. It's called OpenStax. And I was taking an astronomy class last year, and they used this textbook. And of course, when you're taking a class, you don't really have the time to go through everything in depth. So what I did is I went through a lot of these chapters by myself and made close cards based on the information in this textbook. So for example, these are some of the cards that I made. Let's see, if we go back to the very beginning, creating close cards well is really it is a legitimate skill. And something I've learned over time is to make my close cards as large as possible. You can see back here, I didn't even put the link as the source, which I do now all the time. But I have, the way I was doing it was reading each page and then making Anki cards based on the information that I found interesting in that page. So I have lots and lots of different cards here for all sorts of different information. In the future, what I'm going to do is eventually read, instead of creating cards as I read, I'm just going to read once and then create cards of the information that I found interesting. So that's one use I've been doing for Anki. Another use is chemistry, where I do the same thing. This website, I guess, this website has lots of different open source textbooks. It's not just astronomy and chemistry. They have, I guess, STEM, and then they have the arts. So they have their chemistry textbook, which I've been going through as well. And here you can see my same strategy of creating multiple close selections for a single card. So that way you can get as many different cards as selections. So here's like an example of one card, and here's an example of, another card. Oh, sorry, I forgot. It creates two physical cards. So yeah, here's an example of the other card. So that's what I've been doing for here. We also have, let's go back. We have geography, and geography is actually kind of one of the harder ones because I have to do a lot of rote memorization, ROTE. And by that, I mean like brute forcing things into your head. So like, for example, we have the capitals of country regions. So you have each country, then the region, then the capital of each country. And I've been learning a lot of these through, I guess, brute force. But eventually I'm going to go through all of these and create sort of a better way of remembering things, like some sort of acronym or a silly way of remembering it. Just anything but brute force, because brute force, it might stick for a little bit, but eventually you'll forget it pretty quickly. So I think I've gone through most of the countries in North America and Central America. Eventually I'll get to the entire world. Then we have the country regions, and these consist of the name and a map. So if you, for example, you can see El Salvador, region of El Salvador. Again, I've gone through, all of North America, Central America, a couple Caribbean countries. There's Haiti, and I think Haiti is the only one I've done. So yeah, here are more examples of some countries that I am doing. And yeah, some of these I'm doing brute force, which actually isn't that bad. And then other for others, I do some I create like an acronym or a silly way of remembering it. Next, we have the flags, which is just flags of the entire world, every country in the entire world. And these actually aren't even that bad, so I can kind of get away with brute force memorizing it. What else is there? So those GeoGuessr, which I never seriously got into GeoGuessr. I found some website where it has some useful information, but I think the best way of getting good at GeoGuessr is just to play the game a lot instead of making flashcards on it. So this deck is pretty much useless for now. I don't really go through that. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. That is definitely not what I meant to do either. Where's Anki? Right. And I guess we could close this window out. Oh, by the way, I have the Anki extension where you can open up multiple windows at the same time. Maybe I'll put a link to the extension or the add-on in the description, but you can have multiple windows like that. It's pretty cool. Anyway, we have geography, rivers, lakes, seas, and oceans. A lot of these are suspended. For some reason, like the lakes and the rivers are really hard for me to get. The countries aren't even that bad to get, but for some reason, it's the lakes and the rivers that are a lot harder for me to get. So a lot of these are suspended. Again, I need to go through them, and instead of memorizing it through brute force, I need to do a silly way of remembering it or an acronym, something like that. Then Ultimate Geography is another pre-made deck. Yeah, so this has lots of different information. You have the country, then some information, capital, hint, the flag, and then the place on the map. So this has multiple different cards combined into a single card. And I've gone through all of this. However, there's still a lot that are suspended. So I need to redo that. Then what else? We have language. So language consists of what they call classical morphemes, which is basically Latin and Greek roots. For example, when you hear pyro, you know that means fire. Like agri, this means field. These are very, very useful. I'm so glad I've been going through this deck because it's a very convenient way of guessing the meaning of new words that you find by just breaking them down. Here you have like oma, which means a tumor, morbid growth. Lots of interesting things. And see what else. We have the English deck. So the English, I used to learn one new word per day. Now I bumped it up to 3. And in this, it comprises of 2 pre-made decks. We have one pre-made deck, which all the words are lowercase. This does not have any sound. So here's an example of the card where it gives the definition and the sentence. But then there's another deck within here where it does show, I should say, it shows audio. Audio is very, very important for learning new English words. And then there's also multiple definitions as well for this one. Oh, let's see. There is, the 4 character long Mandarin idioms called Chengyu. And something that I've learned something that I've realized by doing this deck is that I wouldn't actually say any of these Chengyu in real life because you have no idea how formal or informal it is. It could be some obscure reference and nobody's going to know what you're talking about. You might come across as pretentious, or people might not know what you're talking about. So this is sort of passive memory, I guess. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. So I guess what I will do is, instead of saying these, it's better to find how people express ideas and copy that way instead of looking at these and trying to reinvent the wheel. There's no need to do that. So this is more of passive memory instead of active. I wouldn't actually try to use those in real life unless it's literally last resort. You have miscellaneous, which consists of lots of random different things, mostly on Wikipedia. We have, let's see, some stuff from my old college classes. You have algorithm analysis, that was computer science class. Some psychological biases on Wikipedia. Yeah, there are also psychological biases and fallacies, both formal and informal fallacies. We have some cards consisting of programming, like C sharp, but I wouldn't actually suggest learning programming through Anki. I think I should rephrase that. You can learn programming through Anki, but you shouldn't learn syntax. It's better to just learn syntax by doing exercises in programming in real life, but it's better to learn coding concepts like, I don't know, like what is the difference between association and composition in computer science? Or like when you have a class, like in Java, if you have a class that inherits another class, is that called overloading or overriding? Concepts like those, but learning the syntax probably isn't a good idea, and that's why I suspended these. Let's see, we have some finance, which I'm not even sure where these are from. Might be some from a random website. Some Khan Academy stuff, even though it's better to learn Khan Academy just by doing. All sides. This is one of those websites where it shows you different news stories based on where they are on the political spectrum. And they had some page on not psychological, but the sorts of biases and tricks that news websites play on you. So I was learning some of those. Curiosity Stream, I don't even use Curiosity Stream anymore. Formal languages. ProCon, another one of those websites that shows you ideas on different sides. Computer networking, another computer science class. And lots of random stuff. So that just mostly consists of stuff on Wikipedia and just random stuff that I find interesting. And now here, actually, before talking about this one, I should talk about instead of talking about quotes Mandarin, I should talk about quotes nonfiction. So as I talked about in the past, one of my hobbies is to look at quotes from random nonfiction books on this website called Goodreads. I searched up nonfiction, and it shows you the list of some random nonfiction books. When you click on one, you can scroll to the bottom and see quotes here. So you can see famous quotes that people have read, and they enter these onto the website. So it's kind of a way of skipping all the filler and getting the most essential pieces of information on a book, and skipping all the filler. And there's lots and lots of different quotes. I'm only on page 7 because each page has like 40 or 50 different books, and then each book has multiple different quotes that span on multiple different pages. Like some of these pages go up to like 20 pages. So yes, you'll be reading for your entire life on here. And that's one of my hobbies. And the way that I remember this information is by making close cards out of the quotes. And I make multiple close selections in order to make it easier. I need to find a good quote. I mean, maybe here's this one. So this one actually is uses more flowery language. I could use, there's this one quote that I really like a lot. There's no reason to ever have the same thought twice unless you like having that thought. So like for example, we have 2 close selections, and then this is how the card would look for one card. So there's no reason to ever have the same thought twice unless then I say the answer. And then we have this one. There's no reason to ever what unless you like having that thought. So this is what I do for, or I should say, this is what I have done for, how many cards do I have in here? It's like, how many thousand? Let's take a look. 2100, 2187. Remember FN 2187 from the Star Wars? Anyway, 3400 total. there's lots of cards in the backlog because that's just the nature of closed cards. When you make a closed card that has multiple selections, it creates that many cards. So that's why this backlog has ballooned so large. This honestly was one of my best decisions of all time, to kind of escape the algorithm and ensure that you're not in an echo chamber. Consuming random information and learning broadly and deeply by learning random information and then cramming it into your memory. So I guess we should talk about this one. So the quotes Mandarin is all about, I guess, killing two words with one stone. So there's this Mandarin website called Douban, which is basically the same thing as Goodreads, but it's in Mandarin. And there's some random books on here, and I found a couple of quotes. So I've only made like a couple of cards for this one, but I was thinking of doing the exact same strategy of making multiple different close cards for a single quote and kind of killing two birds with one stone because I'm combining the hobby and my language at the same time. So I'm not sure how far this will go. We'll see how this develops in the future, but there's no guarantee that I'll continue making cards like this. It's just an experiment for now. Then there's also quote Spanish, which is kind of the same thing, except it's nonfiction instead of fiction. Or sorry, it's fiction instead of nonfiction. There's this one book that I'm reading. I don't even think I have it here, but I found it online, and I was thinking about making quotes, or I was thinking about making close cards for some of the flowery language that they use, so that I could, whenever I'm speaking Spanish, I could use, I could draw from some of the knowledge from these quotes, because even though it's fiction, not nonfiction, they use a lot of flowery language and metaphors and analogies, so I thought memorizing those could be cool. But I've only made a couple of cards here. I'm not really sure how this deck is going to develop in the future. So anyway, that's pretty much everything that I do. Those are all the decks that I've currently been doing for Anki. Every day I do about 100 to 120 different cards. This right here is not actually 4 new words a day. I have done a couple. It's usually like anywhere from 9 to 15 new cards every single day, which doesn't really overload me that much. It takes me, I say, a little under 20 minutes to complete all of my cards every single day. So, as I've said, one of the things that I've been doing, one of the skills that I've developed is creating better Anki cards, which is by making the closed selection bigger. It's good to make, I need to find a good card. Actually, this is a perfect example. So it's not a good idea to make a closed selection for a single word. It's better to make it for an entire idea. Because if you make, for example, right here, when I say a planet, you're really memorizing a single word as opposed to memorizing a general idea. If you make the closed selection as large as possible, then you're trying to get you're testing whether you know the idea. Ideas can be expressed in different ways. So it's better to make your closed selection as large as possible to test whether you know a general idea, as opposed to memorizing a very specific word. So like here, if I were to remake this card, I'd probably make the closed selection like this, including the rest of the sentence. And then I would make an additional closed selection that was all of this, basically making the selection as large as possible. So I've made a couple of different videos discussing Anki on this channel, and the previous one that I did, I believe was my 1400-day Anki streak. And in that video, I talked about a lot of different things, like learning for the sake of learning, and the benefits of it. And I found this book that basically sums up everything that I wanted to say in that video, which is this book called Moonwalking with Einstein, The Art and Science of Remembering Everything. In fact, I recommend just going to the bottom, clicking quotes, and then reading like the first couple pages of quotes on here. This book sums up a lot of why I love learning random stuff, which is that because we live in the information age, we can get any information that we want, and it's changed the way that we use our brains. Our brains have like atrophied, and we don't use them as much, because why would you memorize information when the information can be stored for you on somewhere else? It's better to memorize things and use your brain more and not let it decay. And additionally, learning new things every single day makes time appear to pass slower, because this one, life seems to speed up as we get older, because life gets less memorable as we get older. So it's good to learn more things, like random things every single day, to make time feel like it's passing more slowly. And then just being a more creative person. When you have all these ideas in your head, you can be a more creative person and come up with new and better ideas. For example, my previous video where I talked about learning a language like a chatbot, I started out with biomimicry or biomimesis. I found that from, let's see, what was it? I made Anki cards on the actual definitions, but there's this one, I think it was actually this one quote from this random book that I found that, was it the fungus one? I don't even remember which book it was from. Basically, I found a random book on Goodreads, and that's where I got the general idea, that's where I learned the concept of biomimicry from. So you can be a more creative person and draw from more ideas by just learning random stuff online. Actually, at this point, I can probably put the video in full screen. So I don't really see a reason to stop using Anki, because basically my goal in life is to become what they call a polymath. And what a polymath is I'm a computer science major. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science. So imagine someone who has a college degree's equivalent in a bunch of different languages. Or sorry, not languages, subjects. So imagine, I have a bachelor's degree in computer science. Also, I know biology to a college level. Also, I speak all these random different languages and play 10 different instruments. Basically knowing every single domain or subject possible to its highest level possible. So I just want to learn anything and everything. In fact, this language learning thing is just a small part of my passion in life, I guess you could say. What I really would love to do is learn random things, learn things through the languages that I am learning. So like learning chemistry through Spanish, or learning world history in Mandarin. That would be killing two birds with one stone. And I'm currently trying to do that. So since I want to basically learn anything and everything, what it's made me realize is that I've taken so many classes in high school and college, but it seems kind of pointless, because I take classes, I memorize information, I pass the finals, but still, like 3 months later, I forget everything. How is it even possible to pass the class? For example, I took differential equations. I used to be a math major, later transferred to computer science. But I don't remember, I couldn't even tell you what a differential equation is. It's almost like I didn't even take the class. So thank gosh I'm not a math major anymore. But still, it goes to show that taking class and actually passing it doesn't really mean that you know anything, because it's totally possible to memorize information and pass the final, then forget everything. So I feel like I have to relearn basically everything. Even basic stuff like trigonometry, geometry, basic high school stuff. And I feel like everything before the age of 21, I have to relearn, because in order to ensure that you know something, you have to be able to explain it to someone else that is not familiar with the subject. And I can't even do that for a lot of my computer science classes. So I feel like a lot of this was due to note-taking too much. When professor says a word, or when the professor is speaking and you're copying down directly what they say, your brain actually isn't digesting the information. So I think what I'm going to do in the future is actually take fewer notes, and hopefully by limiting myself, limiting the information that I write down, I'll be trying to capture more information with my brain and let it digest more, if that makes any sense. So this entire journey of doing Anki for 5 years has made me realize two things, which is that going to college does not make you educated. As I previously said, it's perfectly possible to go to college, pass classes, pass finals, but then forget everything after. Maybe this is, I don't know if it's the student's fault, or maybe it's the professors or the school system. I have no idea why this is or how it's possible, because I don't feel like we actually learn anything. Maybe it's the way that we're learning that's really messed up. The second thing that has taught me that this journey of using Anki for 5 years has taught me is that not going to college doesn't mean you're uneducated. It's perfectly possible to not go to college and be totally educated. We live in the information age. You can learn anything you want online. And in fact, I've learned more things from random quotes on Goodreads than I have in college, I'd say. I've learned more Spanish and Mandarin on my own in my free time than I ever could have possibly learned at a high school or college. So we have all the information in the world, and you can learn basically anything you want. College degree doesn't mean as much as it used to, or if it even did mean anything in the first place. So yeah, knowledge, I would say, is an investment. The reason why I learn random stuff is that I know it's eventually going to pay off in the future. Knowledge and education is an investment that you don't know. You don't know how it's going to pay off in the future, but you know that it will pay off. And that's the exciting thing. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. I don't really have a reason to stop using Anki. It used to be pretty agonizing because during my first year, and in fact, we can go back to the other screen. I set up hotkeys to change my scene, so I have to make sure that it actually changed. You see, in the first year is pretty miserable. So I started out dabbling in 2019. Then in 2020, I started out, we have like 40. By the way, I don't know why my mouse isn't showing up. Hopefully it shows up on your screen. Anyway, we have like 70 cards, 139. Then I eventually started ramping it up a lot, where I was cramming a bunch of stuff into my head. Yeah, like 400 or even 500 cards a day. And even at my peak, I think my peak daily average of cards was 495. But it's dropped down, obviously, since I'm doing a lot less. Never ever missed a day. Something that I should say is that don't ever delete cards. Like, if you want to maintain your streak, if you ever make a bad card and you're not using it anymore, don't delete it. Because I have this one day, for some reason, like my streak is literally maintained by one card. For some reason, this day says 4 cards reviewed, but it's actually only 1 card because I must have deleted some other cards. So yeah, then we have 2022. Here I did a mass suspension. I'm not really sure what happened here, but I went from doing, like 600 cards a day to like 200 or so. And then my streak looks a lot more homogeneous here because I just stopped overloading myself with these cards and focusing on quality instead of quantity. So yeah, my streak looks a lot better in the future, or presently, as opposed to the past. So overall, I called myself a pretty serious and advanced Anki user. I've messed with pretty much everything. I've obviously created multiple decks. I've messed with the number of new cards that you review every day. Let's see, I've changed the maximum reviews a day should be infinity. I've messed with the insertion order. I suspended cards, deleted cards, which you probably should not do. I've changed the order? Or I guess having the card appear at the front as opposed to the back to make sure that it appears first. The only thing that I haven't messed with is the intervals. Maybe I should mess with the intervals in the future to make it more efficient. I'm not so sure yet because, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So yeah, that's pretty much everything that I want to talk about in this video. Like the video if you liked it. If you have any comments or video suggestions, then leave those in the comment box. And yeah, subscribe because lots of cool stuff is coming in the future. So that's everything I wanted to say for this video, and see you in the next one.